Hi, and welcome to this module. No. Hi, and welcome to this module on competitive dynamics. So, in this module, we're going to focus a little bit on chapter 5 and looking at competitive rivalry and competitive dynamics, as well as understanding how markets move, particularly in different industries and different industry segments. So, we'll discuss the factors affecting the likelihood a competitor will take a competitive action, as well as the likelihood a competitor will respond to an action that you take. And we'll explain some of the competitive dynamics in a slow cycle, standard cycle, and fast cycle market. So to define competitive dynamics, we're looking at the series of actions and responses taken by all firms competing within a market. And this refers to all competitive behaviors. So the total set of actions and responses taken by all firms when competing in a market. So we think about the way. So in order to think about what I mean by actions and responses, we look at competitors in a market. We have to look at competitors in the market as a series of we had to look at competitive dynamics as a series of actions taken by both parties or by a number of parties. So you can see here that competitors engage in what we call competitive rivalry. Now, they do this often to gain or maintain a competitive advantage, and they do it through competitive behavior, these actions and responses that we speak about, which we'll talk about a little more later on. Now, this results in competitive dynamics and competitive markets that often strive to be the best for the consumer. So when we talk about market speeds, we look at the way in which, So when we look at the number of actions and responses that organizations make, we have to look at the speed at which they do it. We have three types of markets and three types of product segment There are three types of markets that are used most commonly around the world. The first is slow cycle markets. And these are markets where a firm's competitive advantages are often shielded from imitation for what are commonly long periods of time and where imitation is costly. So examples of this, particularly in the medical space, particularly in a number of areas where there's high research development costs that are involved, and often patents or copyrights are used to ensure that people don't imitate it. Slow cycle markets are also places where we have a lot of competition. So things like, again, toothpaste, pencils, all those kinds of things often don't change very much. And so competitors in these slow cycle markets don't really make any strides. We then have fast cycle markets where capabilities aren't shielded from imitation and where imitation happens very quickly and perhaps sometimes actually somewhat inexpensively. Now, interestingly, although it may be a little more expensive than we would expect, the mobile phone market you can see is very much a fast cycle market. You look at the way that Apple and Samsung have different phone, what they call leaks, and the way these are used to determine what essentially knockoff brands are made by their cheap counterparts and sold mass market for a fraction of the price, particularly because they have not had to undo the research development and so do not have to then make up for that initial cost. The last but not least here is a standard cycle market, and these are where firms' competitive advantages are moderately shielded from imitation and where imitation is moderately costly. So again, that idea of being a bit stuck in the middle. We look at standard cycle markets as being used normally in fairly commodity type markets, and competitive advantages, particularly in things like mining and organizations or industries like in things like mining, and where industries like that are moderately shielded from what needs to are moderately shielded from competition, often because there is a relatively high startup cost.